The modern worker's search for meaning. Hi there, everyone. I'm Jeff, and this is Plain English, where we help you upgrade your English with current events and trending topics. This is lesson number 464. JR is the producer, and he has uploaded the full lesson to plainenglish.com/464. One theme of the post-pandemic world is employees' search for meaning in their jobs. With the world falling apart all around me, so many of us cube dwellers asked, why am I sitting here listening to pointless conference calls? A lot of people left their jobs to find something more meaningful to them. But what does it mean to have a meaningful job? That's the topic of today's lesson. The English expression we'll talk about is day to day, and we have a quote of the week. Let's get going. Before we try to define a meaningful job, let's just take a few examples of prototype workers who do successfully find meaning in their jobs. A scientist may find meaning because she's researching cures for diseases. She may never see the cure in her lifetime, but she's working to make the future world better. A safety inspector on an oil rig finds meaning because he wants to protect against an environmental disaster. A teacher finds meaning by helping to educate the next generation. A therapist finds meaning by helping clients and, indirectly, the people in their clients' lives. Home builders find meaning by creating homes for people who need them. They may also love the challenge of building a house, and they may get satisfaction from driving by their handiwork on the street. A plumber finds meaning by using his talents to solve a crisis in a customer's house. So, what does it mean then to have a meaningful job? It's not about having an easy job. It's not about having a prestigious job. And it's not about having a fun job. When people talk about having a meaningful job, it means some combination of the following things: providing for their family, solving hard problems, helping customers, doing something enjoyable, working with good people, having a positive impact on the community, serving society today, or making the future better. Now, few jobs will be satisfying in all of those ways, but a lot of people find their jobs just don't have enough of those things to motivate them anymore. The quest for a meaningful job is a modern-day question. To see that, let's go back in history to when humans were hunters and gatherers. Work, at that time, had tremendous meaning. If you didn't hunt for food or gather it from the countryside, your family didn't eat. Most of us wouldn't want to go back to that time, but the direct impact of everyone's work was pretty clear. Fast forward to about the 1800s. By this time, many workers had specialized. A town may have had a butcher that provided meat, a cobbler that made shoes, a small newspaper that kept the town informed, and traders who bought and sold goods with the outside world. Many people were artisans. They had a craft and they sold what they made. A professional army may have protected the town or the country, and many, many people worked on farms. Work had become more specialized, but it was still easy to see the meaning and purpose of the work being done. The farmer's purpose was to grow the food for the surrounding population, an essential job. A baker's purpose was to turn it into bread people could eat. Sure, not every job was easy, not every job was fun, but for people who had paid work, it was often easy to see the purpose of it. Well, then came electricity, the factory, and then the office. And two things happened that caused jobs to seem less meaningful. We specialized and we started working for bigger organizations. Let's look at specialization. In the 1800s, for example, a town's lawyer may have represented any person who needed to interact with the law. In a year, a lawyer could have defended someone accused of murder, settled a property dispute, collected debts, and argued civil lawsuits. It was easy to see the meaning of the work. A lawyer would have helped or represented any person who needed it. Now, there are still lawyers who take a variety of cases today, but far more common is for individual attorneys to specialize in one small part of the law and for them to hire large teams of people to help them with the high volume of repetitive work. They get really good at one small thing, but it's repetitive. Now, that specialization probably made everyone wealthier, but it isn't making everyone happier. A related issue is the average size of an organization. The large company, even a large government agency or university, that's a relatively modern thing. And in general, the larger an organization, the harder it is for individuals to connect how they contribute to the purpose of the organization. Think about it. When you work for yourself or with a small number of other people, it's easy to see how your individual job contributes to society. If you own a truck, your job is to take something from place A to place B. You find someone who needs something moved, and you move it. If you work at the counter of a small bakery, you can see that your job is to deliver fresh bread to your customers. you hand it to them personally. But if you work for a large organization, the direct impact any one person has is a lot smaller and harder to see. That's because there's a big bureaucracy. I mentioned before the mission of a truck driver is to take something from one place to another. But now picture a company that has a large fleet of trucks. That company has to repair all its own trucks, and it probably has a department dedicated to buying replacement parts. And it might have a person whose job is to make sure the company doesn't pay too much for replacement parts. Well, that's the type of worker that feels lost and purposeless today. They are people with highly specialized roles in large organizations, and they feel their day-to-day work and effort is disconnected from any real service to the world. And large companies are stuffed full of people collecting a paycheck, doing their jobs, but not finding any real meaning. So how to keep them motivated? The answer, large companies believe, is the mission statement. And on Thursday, I'll show you several examples of company mission statements, the good and the cringeworthy. We always think that the world we live in is the way things should be, or that things have always been like this. But this whole way of organizing our work lives, especially in these huge companies like we have today, this is relatively new. I'm reading a great book now called Cubed, and it's a history of the office. When did people start working in offices, and how has that changed over the years? You might laugh, but there was a time where there was no such thing as an office, where lots of people sat together at desks doing their jobs. That all started sometime. And this book, Cubed, traces the office from the very beginning up until right before the pandemic. It's good, and I'll link to it in our Facebook group if you're interested. Just go to plainenglish.com/Facebook, and you'll be able to join the group. Today's English expression is day to day. 3 words, day to day. This is a funny expression that refers to things that happen every day or that happen within the space of a day. We usually use this phrase when we're talking about things that are repetitive or not too exciting. With day to day, we're thinking in the short term. We talk about things that happen from one day to the next in a pattern. You can use this with a variety of words. You can talk about a day-to-day job, a day-to-day life, a day-to-day routine. You can talk about day-to-day operations, things like that. Now, believe it or not, the day-to-day routine of a firefighter is pretty boring. Now, wait a second, you might be saying. Responding to alarms, rushing to the scene of a fire, fighting a blaze, that doesn't sound boring. But that's not what the day-to-day routine of a firefighter is like. Most firefighters don't take out a hose and put out a blazing fire every day. The day-to-day life of a firefighter is not as glamorous. They go to the station. They check their equipment. They do safety tests. They take trainings. They educate other people on fire safety. They sit around the station and wait. Sometimes they get calls to check on the safety of someone who needs help. They respond to false alarms. This is the day-to-day life of a firefighter in most places. So this is what happens most days. One day, the next day, this is what happens. But once in a while, they jump into action and they have to fight a huge fire. That's more the exception. The day-to-day life is not that exciting, thankfully. Outside of my responsibilities here at Plain English, I'm in business consulting. And in consulting, we do projects in teams for our clients. Now, often, a very senior person at my firm will be at the first meeting with our client. And that senior person has lots and lots of experience. Very impressive. But that person is very busy. That person isn't going to actually, do the project. So that very senior person tells the client, Jeff will be your day-to-day project manager, or Jeff will be your day-to-day contact. And that means on the majority of days, the client should talk to me and not this very senior and very busy person. Likewise, a company might have a chief executive officer, a CEO. The CEO is responsible for the strategy and the big ideas. The CEO doesn't or shouldn't manage what happens in the ongoing operation of the company. There's usually a head of operations or someone who takes care of the more routine, day-to-day matters. The CEO should have a day-to-day operations manager to handle things that are regular and routine, so the CEO can focus his or her time on the more strategic matters. In today's lesson about finding meaning at work, I said a lot of people, especially in big organizations, have a hard time seeing how their day-to-day jobs are important. In the example of a small bakery, for example, the day-to-day work might be the same every day. Wake up early, bake the bread and the muffins, and sell them in the shop. That person may do the same thing every day, but the day-to-day job has a clear impact on the customer. But if you work for Bimbo or Mondelez or Kellogg's or the other huge bakeries of the world, you're not baking a loaf of bread and handing it to a customer. Your day-to-day job might be to operate just one or two large machines all day, or you might work in an office. And when workers say they don't find meaning in their day-to-day jobs, it means that their personal routines feel disconnected from any real service to a customer or society. Time for a quote of the week. Today it's from Narayana Murthy, an Indian businessman. He says, "Growth is painful, change is painful, but nothing is as painful as staying stuck somewhere you don't belong." So that's our closing thought for this lesson on finding meaning at work. Nothing is as painful as staying stuck somewhere you don't belong. And a lot of people, as I mentioned at the beginning of the lesson, a lot of people are finding that's just where they are stuck and they're looking for something more meaningful. Well, that's it for today's Plain English. As you know, part of the Plain English Plus membership is live calls. And we do the live conversation calls 3 times a month. And we get together and we talk about one topic, one conversation topic. Now, I wrote this on a Saturday, and we had a call that morning about parenting styles, and that was inspired by the lesson we did about bird nesting. Well, anyway, this will be the topic for the live call coming up next Saturday, May 14th, and that will give you some time to think about it before the call. We do the Saturday calls in the morning here in the Americas and in the afternoon in Europe. So they're at 9 a.m. in Brazil, 2 p.m. in most of Europe, early in the morning for JR and me in Chicago, but we don't mind. The live calls are a great way to practice speaking in English in a safe and supportive environment and to make friends from around the world. I'm on every call. JR is on most of them. They're on Zoom, so we're all on camera, we can all see each other, and they're honestly one of my favorite parts of Plain English Plus. So if you're not yet a member, there's still plenty of time to join before that call coming up on May 14th. And if you're listening after, don't worry, we have plenty more coming up. You can see the full schedule on your dashboard, and if you're not yet a member, you can join at plainenglish.com/plus, plainenglish.com/plus.